Welcome to the Family Table, a new podcast from New Mexico Family Action Movement. Welcome back to the Family Table. I'm your host, Jody Hendricks, and this is where we pull up a chair and we get real about faith, family, and culture. And we talk about how we can thrive right here in New Mexico. Now, last time I told you we were going to have a big question in today's episode. Who's really teaching my kids? Because let's be honest, parents, if we're not paying attention, someone is going to step in and shape the hearts and minds of our kids. So today, we're going to unpack what's really happening in New Mexico classrooms. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how parents can take back their God-given role as the primary educator for their kids. And to help us do that, I have invited a powerhouse of a guest today, someone whose work is courageous as she is shining light into dark places. Today's guest is Micayle Petersen. Micayle is a homeschooling mother, an investigative journalist, and an education expert right here in New Mexico. Through undercover reporting and public records investigations, she has exposed harmful DEI and gender policies in our schools. She's also the founder of Freedom Families United and the co-host of the Casey and Mike Show on AM 1600 Kiva. On top of that, Micayle has also authored school board policy and authored several pieces of legislation that we saw in the last session here in 2025. And all of that with the goal to protect our children and to restore transparency in education. Micayle, welcome to the Family Table.
Thank you.
Now, I have to ask, as we get started, what is your favorite thing that your family does around the family table?
So we were talking a little bit earlier, and I think instead of the family table, my favorite place to talk to my kids is outside on these. So I love woodworking. I made porch swings, and so I put them out on our porch swings, especially in monsoon season.
Oh, yeah.
And we go out there and the kids, and we have some of our deepest conversations out there. But at the table, we do like to play board games. Dinner discussions, I think, have been one of our major focuses as we have gone through our journey, I think, of Christianity and where we ended up in it. We had to make sure that we were focused on values very consistently with our kids. And so I think I love having deep discussions. We love talking about history. And then obviously we talk about modern events a lot. And so I try to keep our kids well informed. I don't know if they love being informed, but I like keeping them informed.
You're like, guess what? Mom's got more info for you guys.
That's right.
You know, the family table can really be metaphorical for your family, but it's just that opportunity to gather together, to come together, to have those meaningful conversations, to have the time where it is maybe just fun, just playing some games. It doesn't have to be deep, but it's just time together. And that is something that truly helps our families thrive. Yep. So, Micayle, talking about thriving, right now in New Mexico, it doesn't really feel like it's very easy to thrive when it comes to education and our classrooms. So you have spent a lot of time going undercover and pulling records and sitting in meetings.
Yes.
a lot. So from your perspective, what is really happening in New Mexico classrooms?
So I tried, it's funny because you asked this question and I was like, okay, I'm trying to give an overview, and sending your kids to a New Mexico public education facility is like gambling, truly, because right now, every year our proficiencies come back. So just from a learning standpoint, we have like 23% are able to do math in fourth grade at grade level, which means almost 80% can't. And then it's the same thing for reading. 20% of fourth graders can't read at grade level. And it's the exact same for eighth graders. And if you look at the New Mexico test statistics that they put out themselves, it's the same story. So you're gambling with your kids' education just on basic reading, writing, and math.
Yeah.
And then when you get into like the ideologies, We have, well, first of all, we have violence and behavioral issues across the board. Many people are reporting that bathrooms aren't safe because they're letting boys into the girls' bathrooms, or there's just rampant literal drugs and sex inside of the bathrooms. And so kids don't feel safe at school. And then we have like the School Board Association, one of our exclusive, somebody sent it to us from the School Board Association. They literally are training school board members that parental rights end when you send your kid to New Mexico public schools.
If that doesn't infuriate every single parent in New Mexico, it should. It should absolutely infuriate you.
Exactly. And then we have the Teachers Association and the American Library Association and different other groups like Listen New Mexico and Transnet. They're all protecting groomers and hiding, pornographic content in schools. They'd rather do that than focus on educational outcomes. And so they're focusing on all the wrong things. And then from the top down, so at the public education department, they're still focusing on equity. We have our mandated equity councils in every school district across New Mexico. And I just went to an undercover meeting last month for their regional or second regional meeting for the state. And they blatantly said, nobody has told us no to stop this work, which is fundamentally false. They have been told to stop, but they said, nobody's telling us no. And even if they did, we would change the language. We would just not stop. Right. And so again, we're seeing that. And even before that, they're focused on race. We have the Indian Education Act. We have the Hispanic Education Act. We have the Black Education Act. And again, all on the premise that white kids, just on the premise of being white, are privileged, they are oppressors, and they are a part of the dominant culture is one of their key phrases. And so they're literally pitting our kids against each other and teaching these Marxist ideologies. And that doesn't even get into the gender policies that we're seeing, them hiding stuff from parents.
It's sickening. And they wonder why we are last in the nation again for our reading and our math. Our education is being across the nation, everybody knows New Mexico is the worst. And they wonder why. It's because they're not focusing on the core education of what education is supposed to be. They're focusing on so many other ideological issues that it's truly sickening. So let me ask you, what are some of the most concerning? All of that sounds concerning. What you've already said sounds very concerning. But what would you say is the most concerning thing that you have uncovered in our schools?
So we went into schools to find critical race theory because it's what Casey and I had just blown the whistle at in 2020 at Sandia National Laboratories for racist and sexist hiring practices and trainings, and it was getting really bad for the work dynamic. And so then we were told this is happening in schools. So we said, okay, let's go look. And we found it at our local charter that we were putting our kids in. And so we're like, it has to be everywhere. But when we went into schools, what we found was worse. So gender ideology, gender theory, radical gender theology is so much more harmful. And what we found was that there's actually policies written behind the scenes to hide, like if a child wants to change their gender at school, change their name, have different pronouns at school, they literally had in the system a way to change it. So the teacher would know, mom and dad don't know that Susie wants to be called Johnny at school, and so that they would hide it from the parents. So the teachers were compelled to lie, and obviously the parents were being boxed out. And who suffers the most? The kid, right? And so this is one of the most concerning things we found. And then on top of that, we went to like East Mountain Charter. It's a high school. And the counselor actually told us that even a little bit of self-harm wouldn't be reported to parents. Self-harm on school grounds would not be reported to the parents. So the kid is in their most vulnerable state. They are struggling. They are clearly in need of more love and affection and guidance than ever before. And the school's like, no, we're not going to tell the parents. And then on top of that, some of the schools we went into, we found out they had something called school-based health centers attached to them. And I remember the first school we went into that had this attached at Manzano High School. And so we go in undercover and we're talking with the principal, and they bring in their special counselors, and we we express to them, like our 13-year-old, isn't maybe comfortable coming to us. How would she receive care? Would you need insurance? And they're like, oh, no. Like we take care of the kids. Like parents don't need to know. We don't need insurance. And like, I just remember breaking down, bawling.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm just like, how many kids have gone through this and they don't have anybody to stand up and defend them?
Yeah.
And so I was just mortified. And then you remember we're fighting those bad bills. We have HB 7, where the public or anybody who receives public funding, including schools, now can't push back themselves at risk of losing funding. And then they passed Senate Bill 397, which now and I just checked on it, and there's tons of funding supposedly allocated for more school-based health centers, but they haven't built more. There's about 80 across New Mexico. And if you go to their website, I think it's School-Based Health Centers Alliance or something like that. And it says that 50% of them offer LGBTQ services. And it's a mixed bag when you call them, and some are like, well, we don't actually offer those. I don't know why it says that. And then others, they offer services like at Atrisco Heritage. They, at theirs attached to their school, they offer community resources. The community can come in anywhere from infants all the way to the elderly. And when I asked them if they could prescribe puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, they said yes. And I was like, what? At what age? They said it didn't matter. And so again, we're finding. So now, not only can they box parents out when a kid is confused about their identity or contemplating self-harm of any form, they can now just send them to a school-based health center where they can provide antidepressants, some kind of mental health care, therapy or any services like that. We know that they prescribe puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. Obviously, we've known for a little while that they can even help them get abortions in New Mexico because our governor's so proud of that. And again, but all without the parents knowing.
Yeah.
So this is that was the scariest thing we found inside schools, was all of that, because it's all tied into the same radical ideology where they think the nuclear family, mom and dad, they have no authority. The school is the highest authority.
Yeah, and that's terrifying.
It is.
That is the government, the school system, thinking that they can parent your kids better than you, or that they can parent ours better than us. And that's just nonsense. They are our children, and we are the ones that should be able to make those decisions. And I think that a lot of the decisions that are made, I think, assume that parents are bad actors. But bad acting parents are the exception. And they're doing this across the state, no matter who the parents are, meaning that the majority of parents who care about their kids, who want the best for their children, who want to be involved, who know their kids better than anybody else, they're all getting pushed out. And that is absolutely terrifying. I think there is an issue, though, with parents today. I think that parents hear all of this. I know that I was there at one point before I started seeing it for myself. But a lot of parents will think, no, my school's the exception. That's not really happening in my school. So from your experience, is this systemic across the state?
So I want to believe, because I'm an optimist and a Pollyanna at heart, that it's not. But unfortunately, I do think that it is. And I say that only from some of our undercover work, where one of our first undercover trainings we went to was for the Black Education Act and the Identity, Equity, and Transformation Division, building an equity bridge training. Sounds like this very beautiful, inclusive thing. But there was a superintendent there on the panel from one of the more conservative districts in the whole state. So from Alamogordo.
Okay.
And he was up on stage, and he says to us that there in Otero County, in Alamogordo School District, he has to sneak in critical race theory. And he literally says Sun Tzu, guerrilla warfare style tactics, right? He says this on stage in a panel in front of all of us, and we're sitting there like, what's happening? And so we're like, we need to talk to this guy. And we talked to him further, and lo and behold, he or doesn't like strongly his employees that are Trump supporters, parents,
Mm.
or, anybody who's conservative, who doesn't, believe in equity and all of the DEI push in New Mexico. And everybody thought that he was a man of traditional values, that he had the kids' education at best heart. And meanwhile, he was just a shill for all the same nonsense, all these same Marxist ideologies. And he said he had a secret team and whatnot. And so we decided, okay, let's go to Alamogordo and see. So we went to several different schools in Alamogordo. And we think we found one pretty good school, and it was in elementary, so that was relieving to us. But then we go to the middle school and we found the same thing, where they had a secret system to hide the names, genders, and pronouns from mom and dad. Make sure teacher knows not to call them by this name or by this pronoun when they're talking to mom and dad in the system. Inside the system, in one of the most conservative districts in New Mexico. And once it was exposed, the people of Alamogordo, they actually did come together. The superintendent had other issues, and so he got out, and they now think they have a very conservative board that's based on traditional values, and they keep really close eye on it, because that was a wake-up call. And I'm so grateful for them, because we can't do it all on our own. We were just like, okay, well, we're called to do this, and here it sent us here, and now hopefully that's a better community for that.
Yeah.
But so that's why I would say it's probably more systemic, that it's more common than not.
Yeah.
And so but we also have volunteers across the state who are now looking inside of their schools for bad books, for ideologies, and trying to root this stuff out and expose it themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a movement right now of parents and community members looking.
Yes.
Which is good.
And I love the fact that you said the people of Alamogordo, when they realized what was happening, they came together. There is power in a voice.
Yes.
So this idea that this issue is systemic throughout our state and all of our schools, and that we really should be assuming it is in our school rather than assuming it's not in our school, and be pleasantly surprised if we find that our school is the exception and it's not there. Fantastic.
Right? Yes.
But assume that it's there. Assume that it's happening. But remember that we can use our voice as parents coming together, as communities coming together. We can stand up and we can make a difference. We can put things back the way they should be. We can affect education for our kids and bring it back to the basics of what it's supposed to be, rather than allowing someone who it's really this particular superintendent, it was his ideas and the freedom that the state policy right now, state law gives him to do that. He was going to do whatever he wanted. So that's pretty scary to think of who is controlling our schools, but to remember that parents have a voice and parents have a role and can definitely step up and,
yes, they can.
And they can reclaim their position. At New Mexico Fam, we truly believe that the parent is the primary educator. We believe that that is biblical. Scripture reminds us that parents, not government institutions, are called to be the first educators of their children. But today it feels like schools are doing everything within their power, everything possible to push parents out. I mean, shadow files, right? I think that's what they're called, where they're like, nope, you can only talk about this with mom and dad, and then this is what we do at school.
Yeah.
I mean, just that, pushing parents out, these school-based health clinics, not reporting back to mom and dad. Our kids can't even take an aspirin or a Tylenol without them calling me to say, hey, so-and-so has a headache. Can they have a Tylenol or an aspirin? But yet they can go to the school-based health clinics and they can get puberty blockers, and they can get referrals to abortions, and they can get these life-changing things handed to them. And that's where the parent is pushed out. It's terrifying to really think. So schools are doing anything and everything possible to push parents out. So Micayle, what are some ways that parents can reclaim their role?
Well, I think parents need to first shift their mindset that schools are tools, right? And you are the parents, you are in charge. So the school is supposed to help you put your kid on a path to success, a path of life, liberty, and happiness. And obviously, it is your job as a parent. You need to feel convicted, right? Because it is truly if you are called to do nothing else on this earth, you are called to protect and educate your children.
Yes.
It is your job to make sure that they are well taken care of. That is literally our calling here on earth, I believe. And that's why I homeschool my kids as well.
Yep, me too.
And so I think that they also need to realize that this is a spiritual battle,
Yeah.
that this is a war for our kids' hearts, minds, and souls.
Yeah.
And you can't allow the school or the state to have that power,
Yeah.
because the only one who can give them that power is you. Right?
Absolutely.
And so if you're just willingly giving them your kid, I think that that's a little bit on you. You got to take that responsibility, take that conviction and say, okay, I got to take that power back. And at that point, you need to start understanding what might be inside of your schools and then go look for it. And if nothing else, talk to your kid every day and ask them, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Which teachers think they're cats? Which ones are like saying, what is your pronouns? Nope, you have to, because we've heard that. They're compelling students to speak, and then they feel obligated to participate in this game, right? So they're feeling bullied, and again, talk to your kids about it, and then you will know.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things. So last year, there was a homecoming, I think it was homecoming king and queen, but one of them was a girl that was a boy and they were the king. And somebody reached out to me and they said, I had no idea any of this was going on at my school. And in my back of my mind, I'm like, why don't you talk to your kid?
Yeah.
And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but that's truly like the simplest solution is find out what's going on at the dinner table every night, or at the breakfast table if you work late, whatever it is. Find time to connect with your kid and just find out what's going on with them at the bare minimum.
Yes.
And so that you know how to protect them, how to do your duty as a parent, your God-given purpose on this earth to protect that kid.
Yeah. I love the idea of shifting the mindset about schools, that the schools are a tool. I think that, you know, when my kids were younger and I was first starting out their education journey, I was overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know what they need to be learning at what age, and I don't know how to teach them, and I'm not a teacher. And so you really rely on the school. You really, have to trust that teacher. And so shifting the mindset to say, no, the school is a tool. And so I get to be the judge, the gauge of where my kids should be and what they should be learning. And how better to gauge than to talk to them, to just be real and say, hey, let's talk about it. In our house, I homeschool my kids, but for a few years there, they were in school. And we had to create this open avenue of communication to say, hey, look, I want to hear these things. You're never going to be in trouble if you tell me that you experienced or you saw something that we don't agree with or that is against our family values. But I do want to talk about it because we live in a world where we're going to see it. But I want you to know how to stand firm against that. But I can't help you with that if you don't tell me that it's there. So having those conversations with kids is so important. But really, for parents that do feel overwhelmed, maybe you could give a little bit of insight to let them know where to start. Like, other than talking to my kids, well, what if my kids really don't realize what they're seeing yet? How can I look into the school? What is the first step that I should take to be able to kind of know what's available to my kids at school, what's happening, what curriculum maybe? Like, for parents who are overwhelmed, what could be their first step outside of talking to their kids?
So if you want to understand like what DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion entails, if you want to understand the Marxist ideologies like critical race theory and radical gender ideology, like there's a number of resources. I know you guys are coming out with your Protect Your Kids resources, and even going to places like PragerU has a lot of their 5-minute videos. We have a few of those we came up with a long time ago, like red flags to look for, like keywords on our website as well. And then places like Tuttle Twins. I love pointing people to Tuttle Twins because like you can read them with your kids. They're fun stories from preschoolers to high schoolers, and then you talk about these different concepts, and a lot of them, go more into like economics and different stuff too, but they have the ideologies. I mean, so just educate yourself a little bit
Yeah.
about what kids might be exposed to and how you can talk to them about it, so you know what to ask them is good. And then just talking to them really, I think, is the key, because they will tell you like, oh, my crazy teacher. Like when we had a counselor that just randomly, she says, I just pull kids in and she just talks to them and they play games. And then one of the kids came forward and they didn't want to go public because they were scared of retaliation, which is just across the board. Basically how parents feel in New Mexico is like, oh, it's happening, and it's happening, like it's happened to my kid and their friend, but I won't say anything because they are afraid of retaliation in New Mexico, which I think is one of the worst aspects of all of this. Is the bully culture is so strong that people are truly scared.
Yeah.
But he said that the counselor calls him in and she's playing Moncala with him and asks him if he's ever considered being a girl and if he's confused about his gender. And he's just like, what in the world? Like, out of the blue.
Yeah.
So we know that even kids who haven't been introduced to this through books, through TV, through their friends, literally the counselors and different people calling them in and asking them these weird questions. And so then it gets it into their mind. And so again, just talk to your kids, and then obviously learning a little bit about the ideologies will help.
Yes.
I think.
Education is so powerful. When we educate ourselves, we can stand a little bit more firm because we know what it is we're fighting against. We know what it is we believe or our values tell us versus what's being spewed from the pulpit, so to speak, the soapbox or whatever, whoever is saying it. You have to be able to stand firm. You know, the Lord encourages us to know his word so that even if someone is preaching his word, but they're preaching a false doctrine, we will recognize it. So if the Lord wants us to do that with his own word so that we know his word, we have to do that with the things that are out there in our society that are being crammed down our kids' throats so that we know how to work against it, so that we know how to let our kids know what's wrong with it and why we don't ascribe to these types of ideologies. It's so important.
I think that's another thing too. So joining with other Christians, like finding a church that actually holds your same values and isn't an imitation, so to speak, and or a bad version altogether, because there's a lot of those. But joining with other good Christians who hold your same values, with other patriots who are willing to fight this, because courage begets courage. And so if you surround yourself, like if there's somebody at my side, it's like if you have a fight in Santa Fe, I'm just like, Jody, call me at like whatever it is. I will educate myself and I'll give a comment.
Yes.
Like, I got your back. Like, people need that support. And I feel like that's so important, to just have people who are ready and willing to stand for righteousness, to stand for what's right in the face of evil, in the face of crazy, because there is crazy and there is evil. And it's good to join with other people because it will give you more courage.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I'm at the Capitol, it always seems to feel better and stronger. And I feel a little bit more at ease and at peace when I know that I've got a tribe with me, because it really does make the difference. So find your tribe and make sure that you guys are ready to stand together, talk about it together. You know, my husband and I will often kind of play devil's advocate with each other and say, well, if I have this argument, well, the opposition could say this, the opposing idea would be this. And how do we work through that? So that's healthy, that's good. And it definitely emboldens you when the time comes to stand firm.
Yes.
Now, we know that a lot of the things that are happening in classrooms today and in our school system come from policy. They come from current New Mexico law that is allowing these things, maybe pushing these things. Even like we talked about House Bill 7 that passed in 2023 that was prohibiting teachers or anybody from interfering with, you know, a kid's access to gender care or abortions. I mean, a lot of this comes from policy issues and advocacy issues. I'm really excited because you have moved beyond just exposing the problems, and you are now writing solutions. So can you tell us about the policy that you have authored for hopefully this next session and however many sessions it takes to get it through?
Okay.
Tell us about it.
Okay. So, and I feel like it's more out of necessity. A little bit about the bill first. So it's simply rating school books just like we rate the movies in the entertainment industry, because we were finding all of these sexually explicit books and lots of bad books that truly kids are not ready for at certain stages. And so we should have age appropriate standards across the board. And we were finding them, and we were going to the school board and, literally reading this filth to the board to get their attention, because we're like, this is what's happening across the nation. So we'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
But they didn't care. They truly don't care. Even like the stuff that I find inside of schools, send it all to the school board. You go talk to them about it. You try to set up meetings. They just don't care. The only thing that they care about is lawsuits or policy. So we have to change the policy.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is create this rating system so that we're not banning books. We're going to rate the book.
Yes.
We need to define what is sexually explicit, what is violence and gore, what is self-harm and suicidal, what is glorifying that. Are we going to glorify criminal activity and different things that are harmful to children that would make them want to mimic certain behaviors, or it would lead them down a path where they would choose riskier behaviors or expose them to exploitation of groomers. And a lot of the material that we have seen, it's like inappropriate relationships between teachers and students, or like criminal sexual predator behavior against infants, like disturbingly gross things.
In our kids' schools.
It is in their schools. Oh. We have read it. And then we compiled them into these booklets. So we have a small group of us, and it's just this coalition across the state, and it's growing, and it's a beautiful little movement that's done bizarre things. Anyways, and so I wrote up this policy because my alternative was challenging one book at a time across the entire state. That's like hundreds of thousands of challenges. And even in Albuquerque, where we live, I'm not allowed to challenge books because I don't have students in a school. And even when you do, you have to challenge one book at a time at your school. And then depending on what the administration says, it'd go up to the district, and then they have to have a board, and it's this whole lengthy process. Might do that 100,000 times. We can't do that.
Right. We
just need to rate the books, have a consistent standard, and G, PG, PG-13, and R.
Yeah.
And then if it falls after the R category, let's consider getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I didn't ban it. The system that says this is inappropriate for these kids, that's what gets rid of the book, because it has no educational value. It is not making the students better. If anything, the data proves out that it is actually causing harm to children that are not developmentally ready to absorb that information. And some of it is just filth, which doesn't benefit any minor.
Right.
Whom they are responsible for.
Exactly. I was looking at your bill, I was reading through it, and I was impressed with all of the evidence-based science that is there to support how each of these categories negatively affect our kids when they're exposed to them before they're the correct age to be able to maturely process the information.
Yes.
And so it comes to the science. It comes back to the constitutionality that a parent should be the one to be able to say, my kid isn't ready for that. And for the parent to say, my kid is ready for this, if they so choose. It's their kid. It's their choice, right? But bringing it back to the parents to be able to say, no, rather than it just freely available to schools. So this rating system helps parents, because parents, let's be honest, they don't have the time to go through the schools and find every book. Like you said, 100,000 challenges. How many of us are going to be able to go in and find all of the books that need to be challenged? That rating system helps parents have an idea of, okay, this is what this book is rated. Am I okay with my child having even this? And maybe it's age appropriate, but the parent says, nope, I still don't want them to read that. Maybe they're not ready. But then again, it's giving the power back to the parent.
Exactly.
And so the policy really is helping parents navigate what's in our schools right now.
So a lot of people, so you're talking about the devil's advocate, a lot of people will say, well, they're going to argue this and they're going to argue this. And yesterday I was talking to a member of the PEC trying to get their support. And he says to me, I am pretty sure they're going to use the self-harm and suicidal ideation against you. And I think that because they're going to say, you're going to ban Romeo and Juliet. And I said, okay, I've heard this argument. It's fine. Obviously, it would fall within the glorifying of self-harm and suicide. That is factual. That is what it is. And I mean, I'm not making that up.
Right.
It's just Romeo and Juliet. And again, you imagine, so that would be maybe rated R inside of the rating system. You need to rate it for what it is.
Right.
And then we have put in the policy where a teacher can say, this has educational value. I'm going to submit this to the district to include inside of my curriculum. I want to include it in my English class or honors English or whatever. And then it would allow the parent to opt in to the content.
Yes.
Again, we are not trying to ban the books. We just want to rate them so that they are appropriate for the age that we are offering them to.
Yes.
And again, imagine just all of these vulnerable youth, they tell us that are so apt and ready to commit suicide already, right? Why would we let them read Romeo and Juliet? And you tell their parents, hey, this is what this includes. Their parent might say, well, maybe my kid should avoid this. Because that's the responsible thing that the school should do, that the parents should do. We're protecting the child.
Yes.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Right. I completely agree. It puts the power back in the parents' hands to make that decision for their child. Yeah. Because that is their job. That's their responsibility. So tell me, what can parents and families do today to help support this policy?
So we are actually hoping to get it into the LESC for discussion, and we really need pressure put onto to Chairman Senator Souls and First Chair Andreas Romero, I believe, and the rest of the members to really push for this as a statewide standard, because we could push this at every school board level, but really what we need is consistent standards across the state.
Yes. Now for our listeners, what is the LESC?
So it's the Legislative Education Study Committee. And so they are supposed to take into account everything that needs to go on inside of the education system. And again, the gentleman from the PEC yesterday was telling me there's precedence for the LEC or the LESC to actually conduct their own studies. So what they would have to do is they would find all of this data. It's readily available. Even our own New Mexico statistics from the Department of Health, to even these LGBTQ groups like GLSEN New Mexico, they conduct a student survey every 2 years that talks about their at-riskness, and then you compile that with the other data. Like they are accountable, the state and the education department, for this material that they're exposing kids to.
They can't turn a blind eye because the data is there. If they're doing their job and they're doing their research and they're conducting their own analysis, they will find what you have found.
Yes.
Which should inform them on what needs to happen.
Yeah, like I'm not making it up. This shouldn't be a partisan issue in any way, shape, or form. It's literally just protecting kids. And there's precedence for it. So in 1996, so Congress passed the Telecommunication Act. And as part of that, and it was signed by Bill Clinton, who's a Democrat, and a very, prominent Democrat, again, they knew even back then that standards needed to be set. And so under the oversight of the FCC, the entertainment industry created the TV Parental Guide Monitoring Board. Yeah. They established a rating system, and then across industry, from all of TV to the movies, everything, just they had to rate movies themselves. They voluntarily participated in this. And there's no reason that, again, I would love to see this as a national policy. I would love to see book publishers have to have a rating on every book that they publish now. Yeah. Because again, we know when a kid is engulfed in a book, it's just as damaging or more damaging, more engulfing as an emotionally compelling movie. Yeah. Right. And so it's the same thing. We should rate them the same way. Yeah. And our schools should be held accountable. Absolutely. For the material they put in front of our kids. Yes. Something funny. So I was looking at attendance, and it's like 30% of kids don't show up to school in New Mexico. That's really, really high. So a third of kids are lacking in attendance. But if you miss like 10 days of school, you get a call or a letter from CYFD. And so they mandate that your kids, like you will bring your kids to school, or we will, send a letter from the authorities and threaten to take your kids away. And then we're supposed to just send them to school and let them expose them to like harmful material. It's like, I don't think so.
I don't think so. There needs to be accountability.
Exactly.
There truly needs to be accountability. Now, one last question before we kind of wrap up for today. As you know, we have what's called our Christian Action Network, which is a network of pastors and church leaders across the state. So I'd like to ask the question, how can pastors and church leaders specifically get involved in this movement, in this policy?
Well, like we said before, I truly believe that this is a spiritual war for our children's hearts, minds, and souls. And if we are not careful, we will lose them to the world. And so as pastors and as parents, it is our responsibility, so pastors specifically, to inform their congregations about what is going on inside of schools, from the content to the hiding stuff from parents, to allowing harm to befall our children through the school-based health centers. And so once we have the knowledge, we can't not act. And so I would compel every pastor who is hearing this, who, we actually want to take them these terrible books and show them exactly what is inside of schools. Once they have that understanding, I feel like they should feel convicted and want to help us truly protect kids. And this is just one little aspect, the policy. And then obviously taking much more action to compel all of our legislators to change our laws, to fix our school systems so that kids are safe, so they get an education. It doesn't seem like a bonkers idea to pull ourselves out from the last, up even to the middle of the pack somewhere would be real good.
That would be fantastic.
Give kids a real shot.
Exactly. Bring education back to what it was always intended to be, rather than so focused on ideology. Now, pastors and church leaders, what Micayle is talking about with this book is they have compiled a book of all of the bad books that are in the Albuquerque public school system libraries. There's also one for the Las Cruces libraries. And as she said, there's parents all over the state that are working on recognizing these books that exist in your area as well, if you're not in the Bernalillo area or in Las Cruces. And we want to be able to send you one of those books to show you so that you can empower parents to know what they're looking for, so that you can educate your parishioners to help them be able to stand firm against the things that are warring for their child's hearts and minds. So if you're wanting a copy of that book, please connect with us through our website at nmfam.org. We'd be happy to send you one of those books free of charge. We just want to help give you the resources that you need to be able to strengthen your congregation, to strengthen the families that come together in your community to protect our kids. Now, Micayle, before we go, we always give here at the family table, we give a recipe for thriving.
Okay.
It's just something simple, although I really think that it would be fun to do like a cooking episode one day, or maybe some baking. I think that'd be really fun.
You are a good baker. Your cookies are delicious.
But our recipe for thriving is just something simple that you can do at home, that you can put into practice this week, to just see your family thrive, to help strengthen your family. So since we're talking about education this week, here's the recipe. Have one meaningful conversation with your kids about what they're learning in schools. I'm not talking about how's school, because Micayle, what is the answer usually to that question?
Fine.
Like, okay. And then, you follow up, well, what did you learn today? Oh no. So let's get a little bit more specific in our questions. Let's ask questions like, what's one thing that surprised you that you learned this week? Or maybe what's something that you learned that you're not sure you agree with? Or you could even ask, what's one thing that you'd like to understand better? And can we learn about it together as a family? Micayle, if you could give one piece of advice to parents on helping them start meaningful conversations with their kids about what they're learning, what would it be?
So we really focus on helping our kids shape their worldview. So and we're very consumed in the news. And so no matter what it is that you're also interested in and you're learning about, maybe share that with your kids. So it's like, as I read a news article, or I'm outraged about something that's happened in the world, or something has made me sad, it's like I like to share that with my kids and explain to them why it's meaningful to me, why it's meaningful to society. I give them small picture, big picture, and that helps me grow and connect with them as well. So I think asking them about their day and then letting them into your world, into your heart, and into your mind, so that they're like, oh wow, like those are some interesting thoughts, and it gives them a deeper connection to like what's going on with you.
Yeah. Well, and it's a conversation rather than them feeling like the Inquisition that they're being drilled. What did you learn in school today? What surprised you? Right? It's sharing this back and forth. And hey, this is something I learned on the news today, and this is what I feel about it based on our family values or based on my understanding. What about you? What have you learned, or what surprised you? It's a really great way to start that conversation. And I want to encourage you, when you ask these kinds of questions consistently, you're showing your kids that you are their safe space. You're reminding them that their first classroom is the family table. Micayle, thank you so much for joining us at the family table, for pulling up a chair. And thank you for your work. It is truly courageous, and you are helping parents across the state. You're equipping them to stand firm. So thank you for what you do and for joining me today.
Thank you for what you're doing. You do amazing stuff.
And to our listeners, if you want to learn more about what Micayle is working on, this policy that we talked about, just head on over to our website at nmfam.org and get connected. Pastors, church leaders, this is your call to action too. Our kids need you. And remember, parents, no one can replace the influence that you have in your child's life. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time right here at the family table.